What is your absolute favorite chant to hear the fans belt out at Stamford Bridge? Some pretty cold days could be closing in on Enzo Fernández while he tries to recover on vacation after Argentina's crushing defeat in the 2026 World Cup final. Behind the scenes, reports suggest Chelsea could already be preparing some seriously tough conditions for his uncomfortable return. Enzo has been pushing hard for a massive new contract, desperately wanting Chelsea to recognize his status as one of the absolute biggest stars at the club. For months, the Giants' Real Madrid also looked like his perfect escape route if Chelsea flatly refused to give him the bumper deal he wanted. But now that dream escape plan is falling completely apart, especially after Real Madrid went out of their way to publicly distance themselves from a possible transfer move, and that has put Enzo in a seriously awkward and exposed spot. Since the midfielder is tied to Chelsea until 2032, the club holds almost all the high cards at the negotiating table. Instead of simply giving their £100 million midfielder the massive salary increase he is reportedly demanding, Chelsea can simply force him back to Cobham under his existing contract and flatly refuse to improve any of his terms. But if the latest reports turn out to be accurate, what the Chelsea board has planned next could make his return to London far more uncomfortable than anyone expected. This awkward tension did not just suddenly appear after the World Cup concluded either. Negotiations surrounding Enzo's future at the club had reportedly become incredibly heated months before the tournament kicked off. His representatives pushed incredibly hard to secure significantly improved terms at Stamford Bridge, but those talks ended without either side reaching an agreement. That left the entire situation hanging in the balance, with neither side willing to give any ground, and the message from Enzo's camp was simple. If Chelsea and the midfielder could not find common ground after the tournament, other potential avenues would immediately be explored. At that exact time, those warnings carried some very serious weight because some of the absolute biggest clubs in Europe were being linked with him, and Real Madrid seemed to be leading that chase. But now, with Real Madrid seemingly stepping away, Enzo's entire bargaining position begins to look very different. To Enzo, the Spanish giants seemed to offer everything Chelsea simply could not guarantee him at that moment: massive Champions League nights, worldwide prestige, and a clean slate. And most importantly, they represented an ideal escape route if Chelsea flatly refused to give him the recognition and improved deal he reportedly wanted. Real Madrid looked like his ultimate backup plan. He has smuggled it infield to Pedro Neto, Chelsea plays it here, and from distance, Kepa is completely beaten by Enzo Fernández. And then came a massive twist that changed the entire mood of the situation. The Spanish giants decided to publicly push back hard against that transfer story. On July 3rd, Real Madrid issued an official statement making it clear they had made zero attempts, either directly or indirectly, to sign Enzo Fernández, and had absolutely no intention of pursuing a transfer. This was not being presented as some random, anonymous rumor floating around online. This brutal denial came straight from the club hierarchy, and that shift potentially handed serious negotiating power back to Chelsea. Because right here is where things get incredibly tricky for Enzo. He is absolutely nowhere close to reaching the end of his Chelsea contract, so he cannot simply run down the final few months and threaten to leave for free. His current deal runs until 2032. While recent reports have placed Chelsea's valuation of their star midfielder at around £120 million, that gives the London club immense leverage. Unless another team is actually willing to meet Chelsea's huge demands, the Blues have very little reason to open that exit door. Chelsea can still offer Enzo improved terms if the board decides his performances on the pitch deserve that reward, but they also have another clear option. They can simply choose to stick with the contract already on the table. No dramatic showdowns, no rush decisions, and absolutely no massive raises just because a few transfer rumors started making noise. From a purely negotiating standpoint, that quiet approach could easily put Enzo in a much tougher position than he expected. Just imagine the tense scene when he finally walks back through the doors at Cobham after competing in yet another intense World Cup final. He has spent weeks performing under the absolute brightest lights in international football, commanding total attention on the biggest, most unforgiving stage the entire sport has to offer. Then suddenly it is straight back to London, where that same old contract battle is still sitting there, waiting for him. After performing on a global stage that huge, Enzo could naturally feel like his market value has shot completely through the roof. Naturally, you come back expecting your club to fully recognize that rise and reward you accordingly. Instead, imagine walking through those doors only for Chelsea to simply point toward the enormous contract already carrying your signature. With 6 more years left on that deal, it means there is absolutely no immediate pressure and zero reason for the club to panic. Even before the massive tournament kicked off, BBC reports had already made Chelsea's exact position pretty clear. The playmaker remained highly valued and was still considered an extremely important part of the club's future plans, which means a potential transfer would only actually happen if another club stepped up with an offer matches Chelsea's massive valuation. And this is precisely where this silent, behind-the-scenes power struggle gets incredibly interesting. The board doesn't need a messy public fallout or some loud media circus to protect their position. They could easily just welcome Enzo back with open arms, send him straight onto the training pitch, and keep every single detail of his current contract exactly as it is. If he falls in line, Chelsea keeps a world-class midfielder tied down to the long-term deal they already locked in. But if he gets frustrated because the board refuses to offer him better terms, then all that pressure instantly shifts onto his agents to scramble and find a solution. Chelsea can simply sit back and relax while the players' camp decides how hard they want to push. And just like that, the entire negotiating dynamic could completely flip on its head. Before the tournament kicked off, Enzo's representatives could easily point to interest from other massive clubs to use as leverage. Back then, Chelsea actually had to worry about whether denying him a raise would force their star midfielder to start looking for an exit. But right now, there is one massive, glaring problem with that exact strategy. That dream move to Madrid, which once seemed so tempting, suddenly looks completely dead after Real Madrid publicly shut down all those transfer rumors. Without that massive European heavyweight waiting to rescue him, Enzo's camp is going to find it incredibly difficult to turn contract tension into a real transfer war. And meanwhile, Chelsea hasn't just been sitting on their hands waiting for Enzo to decide his future. The club has kept busy building a powerhouse squad around him, and Valentin Barco has officially arrived. Moises Caicedo is still absolutely central to that Blues midfield, while Romeo Lavia and a host of other hungry talents are fighting desperately for minutes. Chelsea has spent absolute fortunes rebuilding this squad under Xabi Alonso, giving the manager incredible depth and far more tactical options than ever before. But let's be totally clear, absolutely none of this means Enzo is suddenly some disposable asset. Far from it. He bagged 15 goals and served up 7 crucial assists for Chelsea last term, while also finishing runner-up for the club's coveted Player of the Year award. And then, he took that spectacular club form straight onto the biggest stage in the world, scoring twice during Argentina's dramatic charge all the way to the World Cup final. Those are world-class statistics, and they explain perfectly why this behind-the-scenes contract standoff has escalated into such a massive deal. Even Chelsea's own media channels went out of their way to highlight the unbelievable workload Enzo carried throughout the tournament. While you honestly think it is perfectly fine to broadcast a controversial fan song on your own personal social media channels, it's just completely beyond me. And it's just totally inexcusable. On top of that, he played 7 full matches, racking up an unbelievable 660 minutes on the pitch. He's still absolutely one of the most high-profile stars in this Chelsea squad, and that's exactly why this standoff is getting so incredibly tense. And refusing him a pay rise? It doesn't mean the hierarchy thinks his talent isn't up to standard. The reality might actually be far simpler and much colder. The board likely feels they already own the rights to Enzo's best peak football years, so there's zero reason to rush into offering another incredibly expensive deal. His current contract is locked down deep into the future. So, looking at it from the club's perspective, why would they eagerly throw more millions at him when there's no real contractual deadline forcing their hand right now? Enzo Fernández might be packing up his bags and preparing for his return to London very soon, but his hardest battle is going to kick off long before he even steps onto the pitch at Cobham. And honestly, there's another, much bigger threat lurking behind this entire situation. A dark scenario that could make this entire contract dispute feel infinitely more grim. But what if the Chelsea hierarchy is completely fine with letting Enzo stew in his own frustration for the foreseeable future? There's absolutely zero proof that the club wants to force him out, and no Chelsea boss has ever hinted at a secret plot to freeze him out. But here's where the real corporate coldness sets in. Chelsea doesn't even need to orchestrate some elaborate behind-the-scenes conspiracy just to make his life difficult at the negotiating table. They can just flat out refuse to upgrade his current salary and go about their business as if nothing happened. And following all the explosive drama that went down between Enzo, Argentina, and English football over the summer, that cold reality becomes even more fascinating. Even before the tournament kicked off, Enzo was already quite a divisive figure among plenty of English football supporters. And then came that chaotic World Cup semi-final, where Argentina knocked out England after Enzo scored a massive, heartbreaking equalizer during their dramatic 2-1 comeback victory. Chelsea's official accounts publicly praised his heroics online, while FIFA openly singled him out as one of Argentina's absolute most decisive superstars during that tournament run. But the brutal world of international football can turn fan emotions around ridiculously fast. Chelsea might employ world-class stars from every corner of the globe, but they are still a proud, historic English club, playing in the Premier League, surrounded by incredibly passionate local fans, massive global sponsors, endless media coverage, and a constant heavy domestic spotlight. And in the wake of another painful defeat for England, every single headline involving one of Argentina's ultimate stars is bound to draw intense public noise and relentless scrutiny. So then, could all that heated noise outside the pitch somehow change how much Chelsea is willing to bend over backwards to satisfy Enzo's rising contract demands? Right now, there is absolutely no evidence showing that it has, and that distinction really matters. Actively punishing a player for something that happened while representing his country is one thing, but simply deciding that a player who still has 6 years left on his current contract does not need a massive new deal is something completely different. That is exactly where Chelsea's position gets ice cold. They do not have to retaliate, whip up drama, or publicly challenge Enzo at all. They can just treat him like an important first-team player, keep paying him under the exact contract he signed, and leave the next move firmly with his camp. The cold hard reality is simple. Chelsea does not owe Enzo a massive expensive new contract just because he reached another World Cup final. The club is under absolutely no obligation to boost his weekly wages simply because his representatives are reportedly pushing for improved terms, and Chelsea certainly does not have to help him pave an easy exit route to Real Madrid, especially after the Spanish giants publicly came out and denied pursuing him. That is exactly why Chelsea's toughest possible strategy could look completely normal from the outside. There is no public beef, no dramatic punishment, and no messy transfer list announcement needed. They can keep Enzo at Stamford Bridge, continuing to play him, pay him exactly what his current contract guarantees, and simply let time apply all the pressure. If Enzo eventually gets frustrated enough with this standoff, he might decide that formally requesting a transfer is his only real option. And if that day ever comes, Chelsea could still hold completely firm on their massive asking price without ever being the side that publicly pushed the star midfielder toward the exit. Instead, that ugly transfer request would have to come directly from Enzo's camp. All while Chelsea points to that long-term contract and insists their position has not changed. From a business perspective, that is some serious leverage. But there is another massive piece to this whole puzzle, and his name is Moises Caicedo. Despite all the drama surrounding Enzo Fernández and his long-term future, Chelsea already knows these two stars can play together. Enzo has actually spoken warmly about partnering with Caicedo, with the Ecuadorian's defensive strength, giving him much more freedom to push forward, attack open space, and influence games higher up the pitch. That makes the situation even more complicated. Manager Xabi Alonso has reportedly held private face-to-face conversations with Enzo, and he has also publicly made his position clear. He wants his star midfielder to stay. So while this contract battle might be getting pretty spicy behind the scenes, Chelsea still has massive footballing reasons to keep Enzo right where he is. And that crucial detail completely wrecks the easiest, most dramatic version of this story. Chelsea does not appear desperate to dump Enzo Fernandez or shove him toward the exit. In fact, the club might genuinely want him to stay and remain a massive part of their squad, just not on the incredibly expensive new terms he is reportedly demanding. That subtle difference sounds pretty small, but it could easily decide exactly how this entire standoff plays out. Just think about it. If Chelsea actually wanted Enzo gone, his agents would have serious room to negotiate because both sides would essentially be chasing the exact same outcome, a summer transfer. But if Chelsea is perfectly comfortable keeping him while refusing to hand over a massive new contract, Enzo's position becomes a whole lot more complicated. He can either continue playing under Chelsea's existing terms or pray that another powerhouse club arrives with enough money to seriously tempt the Blues. And right now, that second option does not look simple at all. Real Madrid has already publicly denied pursuing his signature, while ongoing reports have placed Chelsea's valuation at around £120 million. That is an absolute monster fee for any interested club to even consider. More importantly, Chelsea is not staring at an expiring contract. There is no countdown forcing them into a quick sale, meaning Enzo's camp may have to find a completely different way to generate some leverage. That is exactly why his return to London could feel a whole lot more awkward than just another routine trip back from international duty. Enzo originally left Chelsea with massive questions already hanging over his long-term future. Now he returns after the crushing disappointment of losing a World Cup final, all while the destination once heavily linked with his potential escape has publicly shut down the transfer talk. And that contract dispute, it is still sitting right there completely unresolved. Chelsea still has Enzo tied down for years. The club does not appear to be under any immediate pressure to sell, and the massive question waiting at Cobham is no longer simply whether Chelsea wants him. It is whether Enzo is prepared to stay under conditions he was reportedly already fighting to change. So those supposedly brutal terms might never actually arrive on some dramatic piece of paper waiting for Enzo at Cobham. In reality, Chelsea's actual position could be much simpler. Come back, train hard, play, and simply honor the contract you already signed. And if those terms are no longer good enough, his camp will have to go and find another club willing to meet Chelsea's enormous asking price. No public war is even necessary here, because the massive existing contract already gives Chelsea absolute, total control over whatever happens next. For months now, Enzo Fernández genuinely appeared to hold all the power, forcing the Chelsea board to seriously question just how far they were truly willing to go to keep their midfield superstar happy. But now, the power dynamic has completely flipped. With Real Madrid publicly walking away from any deal and Enzo tied to Stamford Bridge for years to come, the real question is whether any other European giant actually values him enough to step up and place a truly astronomical, massive offer on the table. And that makes his return to Cobham feel incredibly tense and seriously awkward. Not because Chelsea has launched any public threats or tried to freeze him out, there is zero evidence of that. But because the club does not need to rush any kind of transfer, Enzo can safely return as a vital squad member. But that massive contract upgrade he supposedly wants is a totally different war. Now the heavy pressure is entirely on Enzo's own camp to figure out what comes next. Will he put his head down, play some brilliant football, and try to earn that massive contract upgrade? Or will another European giant eventually step forward with a massive offer that Chelsea simply cannot turn down? Drop your take in the comments section below, because this dramatic contract saga could still have some unbelievable twists ahead. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with another passionate football fan. So smash that subscribe button to never miss our next big update. And tell us in the comments what you predict for Enzo Fernandez's future at Chelsea.